My parents gave me an ultimatum that would change everything. Choose them or choose him. They said Marcus was too secretive, too distant, and completely wrong for their daughter. What they didn't know was that the man they wanted me to abandon was carrying secrets that could reshape their entire world. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The first time I brought Marcus Thompson home to meet my parents, I knew it wasn't going to go well. My mother, Patricia Caldwell, had already formed opinions based on the little I'd shared about him over our 6-month relationship. My father, Robert, was skeptical from the moment Marcus walked through our front door in Virginia Beach. "He seems guarded," my mother whispered to me while Marcus was in the bathroom during that first dinner. "What exactly does he do again?" I'd rehearsed this answer dozens of times. "He works for the government, defense consulting." It was technically true, but it barely scratched the surface of who Marcus really was. Even after 8 months together, there were entire parts of his life that remained mysterious to me too. He'd disappear for weeks at a time on business trips that he couldn't discuss. His phone was always buzzing with calls he'd step outside to take. He had an apartment in Washington, D.C. that felt more like a hotel room than a home, sparse and impersonal. But when we were together, really together, none of that mattered. Marcus had this incredible ability to be completely present. He'd ask about my work at the elementary school, remember details about my students that I'd mentioned weeks earlier, and listen to my dreams of eventually becoming a principal with the kind of attention that made me feel like the most important person in the world. The problems started escalating after I moved in with him 3 months ago. My parents had already been expressing concerns, but living together made Marcus's unusual lifestyle impossible to ignore or explain away. Some nights he'd get calls at 2 a.m. and leave immediately, sometimes not returning for several days. He kept a go-bag packed at all times. His closet was organized with military precision, though he'd never mentioned serving. My mother started making comments during our weekly phone calls. "Honey, normal relationships don't work like this. A man who truly loves you wouldn't keep you in the dark about his life." My father was more direct. "This Marcus character is hiding something, and it's not good. Trust me, I've been around long enough to recognize the signs." The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in late October. I'd been planning to surprise Marcus with his favorite dinner when he came home from a 3-day trip. Instead, I found myself sitting alone at the dining table at 9 p.m., the lasagna cold and untouched, while he texted that his flight was delayed indefinitely. That's when my phone rang. My mother's voice was tight with concern and something else I couldn't identify. "Samantha, your father and I have been talking. We think you need to come home for the weekend. We need to have a serious conversation about your future." I drove to my parents' house that Friday evening with a knot in my stomach that had been growing for days. Their colonial-style home in the suburbs felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just gotten used to the spaciousness of Marcus's downtown apartment. My childhood bedroom still had the same floral wallpaper and collection of participation trophies from high school track meets. Dinner was tense. My father kept clearing his throat like he was preparing to make an announcement, while my mother pushed food around her plate without eating much. Finally, after my mother served coffee and her famous apple pie, they cornered me in the living room. "Samantha," my father began, settling into his leather recliner with the serious expression he'd worn when discussing my college choices and career decisions. "Your mother and I have been watching this relationship of yours with growing concern." My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Sweetheart, we love you. Everything we're about to say comes from a place of wanting to protect you." I felt my defenses rising immediately. Protect me from what? Marcus has never hurt me. He's never even raised his voice at me. "It's not about physical harm," my father continued. "It's about the lies, the secrecy, the way he controls information and keeps you isolated from understanding who he really is." My mother leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Healthy relationships are built on trust and transparency. What you're describing isn't a partnership, it's you being managed." They spent the next hour laying out their case like attorneys presenting evidence. Marcus's unexplained absences. His reluctance to talk about his past or his work. The way he deflected personal questions with charm and subject changes. his apparent lack of close friends or family that I had ever met, the fact that after 8 months together, I still couldn't give them a clear answer about his career, his background, or his intentions. "We've done some research," my father said quietly, and I felt my blood run cold. "We hired a private investigator." "You did what?" I stood up so quickly that I knocked over my coffee cup, sending the lukewarm liquid spreading across the coffee table. My mother reached for napkins while speaking rapidly. "We had to know, honey. We couldn't just stand by and watch you get involved with someone who might be dangerous, or involved in something illegal." "The investigator couldn't find much," my father admitted, and I wasn't sure if I felt relieved or more worried. "Marcus Thompson exists. He has a clean record, no criminal background. But beyond the basics, it's like he barely exists at all. No social media presence, very few digital footprints, employment records that are mostly classified or redacted." I sank back into my chair, feeling overwhelmed. "So he's private. That doesn't make him a criminal." "It makes him someone with secrets," my mother said softly. "Big secrets. The kind that suggest he's either involved in something he can't tell you about, or he's not who he claims to be at all." They gave me their ultimatum that night, sitting in the same living room where they'd helped me with homework and celebrated birthdays and graduation parties. Choose Marcus and lose their support, their approval, their presence in my life. Or choose them, choose the family that had always been there for me, and walk away from a relationship built on mysteries and half-truths. "We're not asking you to decide tonight," my father said as I gathered my purse and keys, preparing to drive back to the city. "But we are asking you to really think about what kind of future you can build with someone who won't even tell you who he really is." I spent the entire drive back to D.C. replaying their words, hating how much sense they made, hating how their concerns echoed doubts I'd been suppressing for months. When I walked into the apartment, Marcus was home, standing in the kitchen in his usual post-trip routine of unpacking his go-bag and sorting through accumulated mail. He looked up as I entered, and his smile faded immediately when he saw my expression. "What's wrong?" For the first time in our relationship, I didn't try to smooth things over or pretend everything was fine. "We need to talk." Marcus set down the stack of mail and turned to face me completely, his expression shifting into what I'd come to recognize as his crisis management mode. Calm, focused, ready to handle whatever was coming. But this time, I wasn't going to let him deflect or charm his way out of the conversation. "My parents hired a private investigator," I said without preamble, watching his face carefully for any reaction. He didn't flinch, didn't look surprised or angry. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting this moment. "What did they find?" "Nothing." "That's the problem." I moved to the kitchen island, putting space between us. 8 months, Marcus. 8 months of dating, 3 months of living together, and you're still a ghost. No digital footprint, classified employment records, friends I've never met, family you never mention. He leaned against the counter, studying me with those dark eyes that had first attracted me at the coffee shop near my school. "What exactly are you asking me?" "I'm asking you to tell me the truth, all of it, who you really are, what you really do, why you disappear for days at a time." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Because my parents gave me an ultimatum tonight, and I need to know if the man I'm defending is worth losing my family over." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the granite countertop. When he finally spoke, his voice was different somehow, more formal. "There are things about my work that I can't discuss. Not because I don't trust you, but because it's literally illegal for me to share certain information." "What kind of work requires that level of secrecy?" "The kind that keeps people safe." He moved closer but stopped when he saw me tense. "Samantha, I know how this looks from the outside. I know how frustrating it must be to feel like you're dating a stranger. But I need you to trust that everything I haven't told you for good reasons." I felt tears of frustration building. "Trust? You want me to trust you when you won't even tell me where you go when you disappear? When you take calls in the middle of the night and leave without explanation? When I can't even tell my own parents what my boyfriend does for a living?" Quote, "Your parents don't like me because they don't understand me," he said quietly. "But that doesn't mean they're wrong to be concerned." The admission caught me off guard. I'd expected him to defend himself, to reassure me that everything was normal. Instead, he seemed to be agreeing with their assessment. "So you're saying I should choose them?" Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was wrestling with a difficult decision. I'm saying you should choose what's right for you. And maybe what's right for you isn't a relationship where you constantly feel like you're missing pieces of the puzzle. I stared at him, shocked by his response. Are you breaking up with me? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I'm trying to be honest with you for the first time since we met. He moved to look out the window at the city lights below. My work isn't just classified, Samantha. It's the kind of work that means I'll never be able to give you a normal relationship. There will always be secrets, always be trips I can't explain, always be parts of my life that you can't be part of. What if I said I could live with that? He turned back to me, and I saw something in his expression that I'd never seen before. Vulnerability, maybe, or fear. What if I said I couldn't live with putting you through it? The conversation continued late into the night, going in circles that felt both familiar and devastating. Marcus revealed small details that only made the bigger picture more confusing. He'd served in the military, but wouldn't say which branch or for how long. His current work involved national security, but he couldn't be more specific. He traveled because his job required it, but the destinations and purposes were classified. I can't give you the answers you want, he said finally, as we sat on opposite ends of the couch like strangers. And your parents are right that you deserve someone who can be completely open with you. But I don't want someone else, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. I want you. Even if it means never really knowing who I am? I wanted to say yes, wanted to declare that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. But sitting there in the dim light of his carefully neutral apartment, surrounded by the absence of personal photos or meaningful objects, I realized I didn't know if that was true. The next morning, Marcus left for another unexplained trip. He kissed me goodbye at the door, holding me a little longer than usual, and said he'd call when he could. I spent the weekend alone in his apartment, going through the motions of normal life while feeling like I was living in a stranger's space. My mother called on Sunday afternoon. How did your conversation go? Not well, I admitted, curled up on Marcus's impossibly organized couch. He basically confirmed everything you and Dad suspected. He can't tell me about his work, can't promise that it will ever change, and thinks maybe you're right that I deserve someone more available. Oh, sweetheart. My mother's voice was soft with sympathy. I know this is hard, but maybe this is him giving you permission to walk away before you're even deeper. That evening, I started packing. Not everything, just enough for a few weeks back at my parents' house while I figured out what came next. As I folded clothes into my suitcase, I found myself looking around the apartment with new eyes, trying to spot clues I might have missed about who Marcus really was. His bookshelf held mostly professional development titles and military history. His medicine cabinet contained only the basics, nothing prescription that might hint at health issues or ongoing treatment. Even his computer was password protected and seemed to be regularly wiped clean of personal files. It was like living with a very polite, very attractive ghost. Marcus returned on Tuesday evening to find me sitting at the kitchen table with my packed bags beside me. He took in the scene without comment, then sat down across from me. You're leaving. I think I have to, I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. You were right the other night. I do deserve someone who can be completely honest with me. And you deserve someone who can love you without needing to understand you. He nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Samantha, for all of it. You didn't sign up for this level of complication. No, I agreed. I didn't. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. Marcus? When you said your work keeps people safe, did you mean that? Yes, he said without hesitation. I meant that. It was the most direct answer he'd ever given me about his job, and somehow it made leaving both easier and harder. I drove back to my parents' house that night, my things packed into my car, my engagement ring sitting in a small box on Marcus's kitchen counter. My parents welcomed me home without saying I told you so, which I appreciated more than they could know. My mother made my favorite comfort food dinner, and my father helped carry my bags upstairs without asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. But even as I settled back into my childhood bedroom, even as I tried to convince myself I'd made the right choice, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just walked away from something extraordinary, something that, despite all its complications and mysteries, had been real. I just had no idea how real it actually was. 3 weeks back home felt like stepping into a time machine. My mother had kept my room exactly as I'd left it when I moved out for college, complete with the stuffed animals on my bed and my high school honor roll certificate still hanging on the wall. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of her coffee brewing downstairs and the sound of my father watching the morning news, just like when I was 17. But I wasn't 17 anymore, and pretending that nothing had changed was becoming harder each day. I'd taken a leave of absence from my teaching position, claiming I needed time to handle a family situation. It wasn't entirely a lie. My parents treated me like I was recovering from a serious illness, speaking in gentle tones and offering constant distractions. My mother suggested shopping trips and spa days. My father tried to interest me in helping him with his woodworking projects in the garage. Their hearts were in the right place, but their relief was obvious. They'd won. Their daughter was home, safe from the mysterious man who'd been complicating her life. They never mentioned Marcus directly, but I caught them exchanging satisfied glances when I'd laugh at something on television or show interest in local news about the school district. The hardest part was the silence. Marcus didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't show up at my parents' door demanding to talk, like part of me secretly hoped he would. It was as if our 8-month relationship had simply evaporated, leaving no trace except for the engagement ring I'd left behind, and the hollow feeling in my chest that seemed to grow stronger each day. My best friend from college, Jessica Martinez, finally staged an intervention on a Friday afternoon in November. She showed up at my parents' house with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a no-nonsense expression that meant business. "Okay, enough," she said, spreading containers of pad thai and curry across my mother's dining room table. "You've been back for 3 weeks, and you look miserable. Talk to me." I'd been avoiding this conversation, knowing Jessica would ask the questions I wasn't ready to answer. She'd never met Marcus, but she'd heard enough about him during our phone calls to know that something significant had ended. "There's nothing to talk about," I said, picking at my spring rolls. It was the right decision. My parents were right about everything. Were they? Jessica gave me the look she'd perfected in our sorority days, the one that meant she wasn't buying whatever story I was trying to sell. Because the Samantha I know doesn't usually look this devastated when she makes the right decision. I found myself telling her everything. The secrecy, the unexplained trips, the way Marcus had essentially agreed with my parents' assessment of the situation. Jessica listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly just letting me talk. "So he never actually lied to you," she said when I finished. "He just couldn't tell you certain things about his work." "Same difference." "Is it though?" Jessica leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Sam, you're dating a guy who works in national security at a level that requires classified clearance. Did you really expect him to come home every night and tell you about his day like he's an accountant?" I felt a flash of irritation. "You sound like you're taking his side." "I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm trying to understand why you're sitting in your childhood bedroom, eating ice cream for breakfast, when you could be with someone you clearly love." That night, alone in my room, I found myself scrolling through news websites, looking for something I couldn't quite name. Stories about national security, defense contracts, military operations. I was searching for clues about the world Marcus inhabited, trying to understand what kind of work could require such extreme secrecy. Most of what I found was either too technical to understand or clearly speculative. But one article caught my attention. A piece about the increasing complexity of modern military operations and the challenges faced by senior defense officials in balancing national security with personal relationships. "The higher you climb in the defense establishment," one retired general was quoted as saying, "the more your personal life becomes a potential liability. Family members can become targets, relationships can be compromised, and the weight of classified information affects every aspect of how you interact with the world." I closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling, wondering if Marcus had been trying to protect me from something I didn't understand. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was helping my mother with grocery shopping when we returned to find a black sedan parked in our driveway. A woman in a sharp business suit was standing on our front porch, checking her phone. "Samantha Caldwell?" she asked as we approached with our shopping bags. My mother immediately tensed, moving slightly in front of me. "Who's asking?" The woman produced credentials from her jacket pocket. "Agent Sarah Mitchell, Department of Defense. I need to speak with Miss Caldwell about a matter of national security." My blood turned to ice. My first thought was that something had happened to Marcus. My second was that I was somehow in trouble for dating him. Agent Mitchell followed us into the house, politely declining my mother's offer of coffee. She sat across from me in our living room, her expression professional but not unkind. "Miss Caldwell, I understand you recently ended a relationship with Marcus Thompson." "Yes," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to ask you some questions about your time together. Did he ever discuss his work with you? Share any information about his assignments or travel destinations?" "No, never. That was actually the problem." I felt my mother's hand squeeze my shoulder. "He never told me anything about what he did." Agent Mitchell made notes on a small tablet. "Did you ever observe anything unusual about his behavior? Phone calls at odd hours? Unexpected visitors? Changes in routine that seemed connected to his work?" I answered her questions as honestly as I could, describing Marcus's secretive phone calls and sudden departures, without really understanding why this information mattered. Agent Mitchell seemed satisfied with my responses, though she revealed nothing about why she was asking. "One final question," she said, preparing to leave. "If Mr. Thompson were to contact you in the future, would you be willing to let us know?" The question felt like a trap, though I couldn't understand why. "Is he in some kind of trouble?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss the details of ongoing operations," Agent Mitchell said, handing me a card with only a phone number printed on it. "But your cooperation would be appreciated." After she left, my parents and I sat in stunned silence. My father was the first to speak. "This confirms everything we suspected," he said grimly. "This Marcus character is involved in something dangerous, and now they're worried about you too." But I couldn't shake the feeling that Agent Mitchell's visit meant something different. The way she'd asked about Marcus contacting me in the future suggested he might be in danger, not that he was dangerous. That evening, I called the number on Agent Mitchell's card. "I need to know," I said when she answered. "Is Marcus safe?" There was a long pause. "Miss Caldwell, I can't discuss operational details, but I can tell you that your decision to end the relationship was prudent, given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" "I'm sorry, I've already said more than I should have." She hung up, leaving me with more questions than answers. But for the first time since I'd left Marcus's apartment, I felt something other than doubt about my decision. I felt fear. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside my window made me jump. Every car that drove slowly past the house made me wonder if someone was watching. Agent Mitchell's visit had transformed Marcus from a secretive boyfriend into something much more complex and potentially dangerous. But it had also made me realize something I'd been trying to ignore. I missed him. Despite everything, despite the secrets and the frustration and my parents' disapproval, I missed the way he looked at me like I was the most important thing in his world. I missed the quiet moments when his guard would drop, and I'd catch glimpses of the man behind all the mystery. Most of all, I missed feeling like I was part of something bigger than myself, even if I didn't understand what that something was. The question was whether missing him was worth the risk of whatever Agent Mitchell was afraid might happen next. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night in early December. I knew the exact time because I'd been lying awake staring at my phone, debating whether to text Marcus for the 100th time since Agent Mitchell's visit 2 weeks earlier. The number was blocked, but something made me answer anyway. "Don't say my name." Marcus's voice was barely above a whisper, tense in a way I'd never heard before. "Are you alone?" My heart started racing. "Yes. What's happening? Are you okay?" "Listen carefully. In about 10 minutes, someone is going to knock on your parents' front door. Don't answer it. Don't turn on any lights. Stay away from the windows until sunrise." "Marcus, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I can't explain right now. Just promise me you'll do what I'm asking." The line went dead. I sat up in bed, every nerve in my body suddenly alert. Outside, the suburban street was quiet, lit only by scattered streetlights and the occasional porch lamp. My parents were asleep down the hall, completely unaware that their daughter was apparently in some kind of danger. 8 minutes later, I heard the soft crunch of footsteps on the gravel driveway. I crept to my bedroom window and peered through a gap in the curtains. A dark SUV was parked across the street, and I could make out the silhouettes of at least 2 people inside. Another figure was approaching the front door, moving with the deliberate caution of someone trying not to wake the neighbors. The doorbell rang once, soft and brief. Then again, more insistently. I held my breath, praying my parents wouldn't wake up. After what felt like an eternity, I heard footsteps retreating. The SUV started up and drove away, but I stayed at the window until the first hints of dawn appeared in the sky. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Coffee shop on Maple Street, 8 a.m., come alone. I knew it was from Marcus, though I couldn't understand how he'd gotten a different phone or why he was being so cryptic. The coffee shop was a local place my parents had taken me to since I was a child, small and familiar, and about as non-threatening as a location could be. I slipped out of the house before my parents woke up, leaving a note saying I'd gone for an early morning walk. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived, just a few early commuters and one elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Marcus wasn't there. I ordered a latte and found a table near the back, checking my phone every few seconds. At 8:15, a woman I didn't recognize approached my table. She was maybe 40, with short brown hair and the kind of unremarkable appearance that would make her instantly forgettable in a crowd. "Samantha, I'm Rebecca Chen. Marcus asked me to meet with you." I didn't move. "I don't know who you are." She sat down across from me anyway, speaking in a low voice that barely carried across the small table. "Marcus is in a situation where he can't contact you directly. He wanted to make sure you understood what happened last night." "What happened last night?" Rebecca glanced around the coffee shop, then leaned closer. "There are people who want to use you to get to Marcus. Last night was a probe, testing security around your family home. It won't be the last one." My coffee suddenly tasted like cardboard. "Use me how?" Quote, "Marcus has access to information that certain groups would kill for. They can't get to him directly, so they're looking for pressure points, people he cares about." The implication hit me like a physical blow. They want to kidnap me. Or worse. Rebecca's expression was grim. "Marcus has been trying to keep you safe by maintaining distance, but his feelings for you are well known within certain circles. Ending your relationship publicly was supposed to take you off the target list." Supposed to? It didn't work. If anything, it made them more interested. They think a broken-hearted ex-girlfriend might be easier to manipulate, more willing to help them get revenge against the man who hurt her. I stared at her, trying to process what she was telling me. Who are they? What kind of enemies does Marcus have? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Foreign intelligence services, terrorist organizations, criminal syndicates with government connections. Marcus's work puts him at the center of operations that affect global security. The people who want him dead or compromised aren't playing games. Then why are you telling me this? Why not just let me stay ignorant and safe? Because ignorance isn't keeping you safe anymore. She slid a business card across the table. And because Marcus asked me to give you a choice. I looked at the card. It was completely blank except for a phone number. What kind of choice? You can disappear. New identity. Relocation to somewhere they'll never find you. You'd have to cut all contact with your family, your friends, your old life. But you'd be safe. My hands were shaking. Or you can help us end this. There's an operation in motion that could eliminate the primary threats against both you and Marcus. But it would require you to trust him completely, even though he still can't tell you everything. I thought about my parents sleeping peacefully in their suburban home, completely unaware that their daughter had somehow become a target in what sounded like a spy thriller. I thought about Agent Mitchell's visit and her cryptic warnings. I thought about Marcus's late-night phone calls and sudden departures, wondering how many of them had been attempts to protect people like me. If I help, what would I have to do? Rebecca's expression softened slightly. First, you'd need to move to a secure location, somewhere we can protect you while the operation unfolds. Then, you'd need to follow instructions exactly, even when they don't make sense to you. Instructions from Marcus? From Marcus and his team, people who have been working to neutralize these threats for months. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into a world I didn't understand. What kind of people is Marcus working with? The kind who take an oath to protect this country from enemies most citizens never know exist. Rebecca stood up, preparing to leave. I need an answer by tonight. If you decide to disappear, arrangements will be made immediately. If you decide to help, someone will contact you with further instructions. She was halfway to the door when I called after her. Rebecca, is Marcus okay? She turned back, and for the first time, I saw something like sympathy in her expression. He's doing his job, but he's also terrified that something will happen to you because of him. That's why he let you go, and that's why he's giving you this choice now. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the blank business card and trying to make sense of everything I'd learned. My quiet life as an elementary school teacher felt like it belonged to someone else. The biggest decision I'd faced a month ago was whether to move in with my boyfriend. Now, I was apparently choosing between witness protection and becoming part of some kind of covert operation. I drove home to find my parents in the kitchen, worried about my early morning disappearance. My mother had dark circles under her eyes, and my father kept glancing toward the front door, as if expecting trouble. Honey, there was something strange last night, my mother said as I poured myself another cup of coffee. I thought I heard the doorbell around 3 a.m, but when I looked outside, no one was there. My father was more direct. I'm wondering if we should install a security system, maybe get some cameras for the front yard. I realized they'd sensed the danger without understanding what it was. Their parental instincts had picked up on something being wrong, even though they'd slept through the actual threat. That might be a good idea, I said carefully. That evening, I called the number on Rebecca's card. She answered on the first ring. I want to help, I said, but I need to know one thing first. What's that? Is there really a chance this could work? That we could all end up safe and together when it's over? Quote, Rebecca was quiet for a moment. There's a chance. But Samantha, you need to understand that the people Marcus is up against don't give up easily. Even if this operation succeeds, your life will never be completely normal again. I looked around my childhood bedroom, at the stuffed animals and participation trophies and evidence of a simpler time when my biggest worry was passing my teaching certification exam. It stopped being normal the day I met him, I said. What do I need to do? The extraction happened at 4 a.m. on a Thursday, exactly 72 hours after my phone call with Rebecca. I'd spent those 3 days pretending everything was normal, while secretly preparing to disappear from my life without explanation. The hardest part was lying to my parents. I told them I'd been offered a last-minute opportunity to attend a teaching conference in Denver, complete with a fabricated story about professional development credits and networking opportunities. My mother helped me pack, folding my clothes with the same care she'd shown when sending me off to college. I'm proud of you for getting back out there, she said, tucking my favorite sweater into the suitcase. This conference will be good for you, help you move forward. If only she knew that moving forward meant diving headfirst into whatever dangerous world Marcus inhabited. The pickup was flawlessly orchestrated. A taxi arrived exactly when Rebecca had said it would, driven by a woman who looked like any other DC cab driver, but who spoke with the kind of precision that suggested military training. We drove through the pre-dawn darkness to Reagan National Airport, where I was handed boarding documents for a flight to Atlanta. This is just the first leg, the driver explained as we pulled up to departures. Someone will meet you when you land. The flight was surreal. I sat among business travelers and tourists, drinking airline coffee and pretending to read a magazine, while my mind raced with questions about what I was walking into. The man in 14C looked like he might be following me, but then again, my paranoia level had skyrocketed since learning that foreign agents might want to kidnap me. In Atlanta, a young man in a Braves baseball cap approached me at baggage claim. Samantha, I'm David. Rebecca sent me. David looked like he could be a college student or a tech worker, certainly not someone involved in covert operations. But he led me through the airport with the confident navigation of someone who'd done this before, eventually stopping at a car rental counter where paperwork was already waiting. We're driving from here, he explained as we headed toward the parking garage. About 4 hours north, into the mountains. The location is secure, completely off-grid. The drive took us through rural Georgia and into the foothills of North Carolina, along increasingly narrow roads that wound through dense forest. David was chatty at first, asking about my flight and making small talk about the scenery. But as we climbed higher into the mountains, he became more focused, checking his mirrors frequently and occasionally speaking into a Bluetooth earpiece in what sounded like code. Our destination was a cabin that looked like something from a luxury vacation rental website. 2 stories of weathered wood and stone, surrounded by towering pine trees and complete privacy. Solar panels on the roof and a satellite dish suggested it was more technologically sophisticated than its rustic appearance implied. Rebecca met us on the front porch, looking completely different from the unremarkable woman I'd met at the coffee shop. Here, in what was clearly her element, she moved with military bearing and wore tactical clothing that emphasized her competence rather than her ability to blend into a crowd. "Welcome to your temporary home," she said, helping me carry my bags inside. "I know this is overwhelming, but you're safe here. The property is monitored 24/7, and we're 60 miles from the nearest town." The cabin's interior was a fascinating blend of rustic charm and high-tech surveillance equipment. Stone fireplaces and handcrafted furniture shared space with multiple computer screens, communication arrays, and what looked like enough weapons to outfit a small army. "How long will I be here?" I asked, setting my suitcase down in what appeared to be a guest bedroom. "That depends on how quickly we can execute the operation," Rebecca said. "Could be a few days, could be a couple of weeks." "And Marcus? Is he here?" Rebecca's expression became carefully neutral. "Marcus is handling other aspects of the mission. You'll see him when it's safe." That evening, Rebecca began explaining what I'd gotten myself into. We sat in front of the fireplace while she laid out photographs, documents, and computer printouts that painted a picture of international intrigue I never could have imagined. "The threats against you stem from Marcus's current assignment," she began, spreading photos across the coffee table. "For the past 18 months, he's been leading an operation to infiltrate and dismantle a network of arms dealers who've been selling American military technology to hostile foreign governments." The photos showed men in expensive suits meeting in what looked like luxury hotels and private clubs. Others showed shipping containers, technical diagrams, and surveillance shots taken from a distance. "These people have been responsible for American weapons ending up in the hands of terrorists and enemy states," Rebecca continued. "Marcus has been working undercover to gather evidence and identify the key players." I studied the images, trying to understand how my quiet, secretive boyfriend fit into this world of international espionage. What kind of undercover work? The kind that required him to become someone else entirely, to convince these arms dealers that he was a corrupt military official willing to sell classified information. Suddenly, Marcus's secretive phone calls and unexplained absences made sense. He hadn't been pulling away from me out of disinterest or commitment issues. He'd been living a double life that required him to pretend to be a traitor to his own country. "The problem," Rebecca continued, "is that these dealers have become suspicious. They think Marcus might be working for American intelligence, and they're looking for leverage to test his loyalty." "Leverage like me?" "Exactly. They want to see if he'll sacrifice you to protect his cover, or if he'll blow his mission to save you. Either choice gives them what they need." I felt sick as the implications sank in. So by dating me, Marcus put himself in an impossible position. By dating you, Marcus made himself human, which is exactly what we needed. Rebecca's words confused me. "What do you mean?" She pulled out another set of photographs, these showing a man I recognized as Marcus, but who looked completely different. In these images, he was clean-shaven, wearing expensive clothes and carrying himself with an arrogance I'd never seen from him. "This is Marcus's cover identity, Colonel James Harrison, a decorated officer with gambling debts and a taste for luxury he can't afford on his military salary. For 18 months, he's been playing this role perfectly, convincing these dealers that he's willing to sell out his country for money." Quote, "But something changed," I said, beginning to understand. "Something changed when he met you. The Marcus I've worked with for 5 years is disciplined, focused, emotionally detached. But these dealers started noticing that, quote, Colonel Harrison had become distracted, that he was taking risks to spend time with a woman who didn't fit his cover story. Rebecca pulled out surveillance photos that made my blood run cold. They showed Marcus and me at restaurants, walking through downtown D.C., entering and leaving his apartment building. Someone had been watching us for months. They investigated you, learned about your background, your family, your complete lack of connection to anything military or classified. To them, you represented a weakness they could exploit. So the operation is compromised because Marcus fell in love. The operation is compromised because Marcus is human. But that's also what's going to allow us to end this. Rebecca stood up, moving to one of the computer screens. These arms dealers think they understand Marcus's weakness. They think they can manipulate him through you. She pulled up what looked like a tactical plan, complete with timelines and geographical markers. What they don't know is that we've been anticipating this exact scenario. In 3 days, they're going to make their move to kidnap you. Except you won't be where they think you are. I stared at the screen, seeing my name listed under assets alongside a dozen other code names and operational details. You're using me as bait. We're using their predictable behavior against them. They want to grab you to force Marcus's hand. We're gonna let them think they've succeeded, while actually capturing the entire network in one coordinated strike. The plan was elegant in its complexity. I would appear to return to my parents' house, following a carefully choreographed routine that would make me seem vulnerable and unprotected. The arms dealers would attempt their kidnapping, but instead of grabbing me, they'd walk into a trap that had been months in the making. What about my parents? I asked, thinking of my mother and father sleeping peacefully in their suburban home, unaware that their house was about to become the center of an international incident. They'll be evacuated beforehand, told there's a gas leak that requires temporary relocation. They'll never know what really happened. Quote, that night, I lay in the cabin's guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything I'd learned. Marcus wasn't just a government employee with classified responsibilities. He was essentially a spy, living a dangerous double life that required him to betray everything he believed in order to protect his country. And I was the weakness that threatened to destroy everything he'd worked for. But according to Rebecca, I was also the key to ending the threat permanently. In 3 days, I would find out if love was really strong enough to overcome the forces trying to tear us apart, or if I was about to become another casualty in a war one was only beginning to understand. The operation began at dawn on Sunday morning. I woke up in the mountain cabin to find Rebecca already dressed in full tactical gear, coordinating with multiple teams through encrypted communications. The woman who'd seemed so ordinary in the coffee shop was clearly a seasoned operative, directing what appeared to be a massive multi-agency effort. Today's the day, she said, handing me a cup of coffee and a detailed timeline. In 6 hours, you'll be back at your parents' house. By tonight, this will all be over. The drive back to Virginia felt like descending from another world into my former life. David had been replaced by a different handler, a stern woman named Agent Torres, who briefed me continuously during the 4-hour journey. Every detail of my day had been choreographed, from the time I'd arrive home to the route I'd take for an evening walk that would make me vulnerable to kidnapping. Remember, Agent Torres said as we neared my parents' neighborhood, you're supposed to be returning from Denver, tired but optimistic about your teaching conference. Act normal, but not too cautious. We need them to believe you're an easy target. My parents' house felt eerily quiet when I arrived. A moving truck was parked outside, and workers were loading furniture into it while my mother supervised with obvious distress. Samantha, she rushed over to hug me. Thank goodness you're back. We've had a terrible gas leak, and they're saying the whole street needs to evacuate until they can repair the main line. My father appeared from the garage, looking frustrated but resigned. Worst timing possible, sweetheart. We'll be staying at your Aunt Linda's for a few days while they sort this mess out. Quote, I played my part perfectly, expressing concern about the gas leak and disappointment about coming home to chaos. Within 2 hours, my parents were gone, safely removed from what was about to become a battlefield. Agent Torres had positioned herself across the street in a utility van, maintaining constant radio contact through a nearly invisible earpiece I wore. Other team members were scattered throughout the neighborhood, disguised as joggers, delivery drivers, and maintenance workers. "Target vehicle spotted," came the crackling voice in my ear around 6 p.m., 2 black SUVs, approaching from the north. I was in my childhood bedroom, supposedly unpacking from my trip, when I saw them through the window. The same dark vehicles that had prowled our street weeks earlier, moving with predatory patience. "They're going to wait until you take your evening walk," Agent Torres's voice guided me. "Remember, you need to make it to the park before allowing them to approach. The arrest teams are positioned there." At 7:30, I left the house carrying a water bottle and wearing the jogging clothes that would mark me as an easy target. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure the kidnappers would hear it, but I forced myself to maintain the casual pace of someone going for routine exercise. The park was 6 blocks away, a route that would take me through increasingly isolated streets. I could feel the SUVs following at a distance, their occupants waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "Almost there," I whispered into my concealed microphone. "Where's Marcus?" "He's in position," Agent Torres replied. "Just stick to the plan." I entered the park through the main entrance, following the jogging path toward the wooded area where the arrest teams were hidden. Behind me, car doors slammed as the kidnappers finally made their move. 3 men approached from different angles, moving with military precision. They weren't trying to be subtle anymore. This was clearly meant to be a grab-and-go operation. "Samantha Caldwell?" The lead man called my name as if he was asking directions. "We need to talk to you about Marcus Thompson." I stopped jogging, playing the role of a confused woman who didn't understand the danger she was in. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" That's when everything went wrong. Instead of the coordinated arrest I'd been expecting, gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The kidnappers had brought backup that our intelligence hadn't detected, and what should have been a controlled takedown became a full-scale firefight. I dove behind a park bench as bullets shattered tree branches above my head. Through the chaos, I could hear Agent Torres shouting orders into her radio, calling for additional support and medical teams. Then I saw him. Marcus emerged from the tree line wearing tactical gear I'd never seen before, moving with lethal efficiency as he engaged the kidnappers. But this wasn't the quiet, mysterious man I'd dated. This was someone trained for combat, someone who belonged in this world of violence and deception. The fight lasted maybe 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. When the smoke cleared, 5 men were in custody, 2 were being treated by paramedics, and I was sitting on the ground with my hands shaking uncontrollably. Marcus knelt beside me, pulling off his tactical helmet to reveal the face I'd fallen in love with, but his expression was different now, harder, more focused, carrying the weight of secrets I was only beginning to understand. "Are you hurt?" He checked me for injuries with practiced efficiency. "I'm okay. But Marcus, what you just did, the way you moved, who are you really?" He helped me to my feet, glancing around at the aftermath of the operation. FBI agents were processing the crime scene, while medical teams worked on the wounded. It looked like something from a movie, not like anything that should happen in a suburban park. "Walk with me," he said quietly. We moved away from the chaos, toward a quieter section of the park where Agent Torres was coordinating with what appeared to be very senior officials. As we approached, I could see her speaking respectfully to a man in an expensive suit who carried himself with unmistakable authority. "Samantha," Marcus said, his voice formal in a way I'd never heard before, "I'd like you to meet my boss." The man turned toward us, and I found myself face to face with someone whose photograph I'd seen countless times in newspapers and on television. The shock must have shown on my face, because he smiled with genuine warmth. "Miss Caldwell, I apologize for the dramatic circumstances of our meeting. I'm General William Patterson, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff." I stared at him, then at Marcus, trying to process what I was hearing. "Joint Chiefs? But that means..." Quote, "It means Colonel Marcus Thompson has been working directly under my command for the past 3 years," General Patterson said, "leading some of our most sensitive counterintelligence operations." The truth hit me like a physical blow. Marcus wasn't just a government employee with security clearance. He was a high-ranking military officer working at the highest levels of national security, reporting directly to the most senior military official in the country. The arms dealers we've been tracking, Marcus explained. They've been trying to compromise Pentagon operations for years. My assignment was to infiltrate their network and gather evidence for coordinated international arrests. Which we accomplished tonight, General Patterson added. Thanks in large part to your courage, Ms. Caldwell. The intelligence we gathered through this operation will dismantle weapons trafficking networks across 3 continents. I looked between the two men, still struggling to understand my place in all of this. So when my parents said Marcus was too secretive, they were absolutely right, Marcus said with a slight smile. I am too secretive. It's literally my job to be too secretive. General Patterson checked his watch, then addressed Marcus with the tone of someone accustomed to giving orders. Colonel, I believe you have some personal matters to attend to. Your next assignment doesn't begin for another month. Yes, sir. As the general walked away, Marcus turned to face me fully. Samantha, I know I owe you explanations about everything. About who I really am, what I really do, and why I let you think I was just some mysterious government consultant. I have questions, I admitted. I have answers, all of them, finally. He reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a small box that made my heart skip. But first, I have something I should have given you 3 months ago. The engagement ring caught the last rays of sunlight as he dropped to one knee in the middle of the park where we'd just survived a gunfight with international criminals. Samantha Caldwell, I love you enough to risk my career, my mission, and my life. Will you marry a man whose job requires him to occasionally save the world? I looked around at the FBI agents, the medical teams, the evidence of the dangerous world Marcus inhabited every day. Then I looked at his face, seeing past the tactical gear and military bearing to the man who'd held me close during quiet Sunday mornings and listened to stories about my elementary school students. Only if you promise to tell me the truth about everything from now on. I promise, no more secrets. Then yes. 6 months later, we were married in a small ceremony attended by my parents, a handful of close friends, and several people I suspected were bodyguards. My father walked me down the aisle, having completely changed his opinion about Marcus once he learned that his daughter's mysterious boyfriend was actually a decorated military officer working to protect national security. I always knew there was something special about that young man, my mother insisted during the reception, conveniently forgetting her previous concerns about his secretive nature. Marcus's work still requires travel and confidentiality, but now I understand the context. When he disappears for a week, I know he's somewhere protecting American interests from threats most people never hear about. When he takes encrypted phone calls at odd hours, I know it's because someone, somewhere, is counting on his expertise to keep them safe. It's not the normal relationship my parents originally wanted for me, but it's the right relationship for us. And sometimes, the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most ordinary moments, like meeting a mysterious stranger in a coffee shop and deciding to trust that there's more to his story than he can safely tell. The only difference is, now I know exactly how extraordinary that story really is. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.